Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a hard look at dismantling all those superficial life hacks and quick fixes that just completely saturate our modern world. Instead, we're going to focus on what it actually takes to build deep, lasting personal change. We are getting right down to the very root of human effectiveness.
To do this, we're grounding today's explainer in the source material of an absolute classic, Stephen R. Covey's Framework for Principle-Centered Living. This work has a massive cultural footprint, and honestly, that's because it addresses this incredibly deep inner hunger we all seem to have. Because, no matter how much outward success we might achieve, so many of us still really struggle with a need for personal congruency, true effectiveness, and healthy growing relationships.
Let's move to our agenda and see how this builds. We've got a clear roadmap for our destination today. We'll start with the quick fix illusion, then character over personality, shifting your paradigm, the P/PC balance, and finally, habit 1, be proactive.
All right, jumping into section 1, the quick fix illusion, and exactly why those social band-aids always fail. So why do quick fixes always fail? If you've ever felt totally frustrated with self-improvement hacks that just kind of fizzle out after a few weeks, you really have to ask yourself this. The source material reveals that treating human growth like cramming for a test completely defies natural systems. Think about a farm for a second. Can you literally forget to plant your crops in the spring, goof off all summer, and then just cram in the fall to bring in the harvest? No way. The farm is a natural system. The process has to be followed. You reap what you sow, and there are absolutely zero shortcuts.
But man, we constantly look for those shortcuts anyway. We hear these chronic complaints all the time, right? My marriage has gone flat. I just don't feel loyalty from my employees, or there's literally never enough time. These are deep, chronic problems. When we just slap on a social band-aid or try some simple positive mental attitude techniques, we might temporarily mask the pain, sure, but we never truly solve the underlying issue. The chronic problem is always going to resurface.
Which brings us to section 2, character over personality. Deep roots versus charm.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the clean contrast here. To understand why we rely so heavily on quick fixes, we have to look at a major historical shift. For the first 150 years of American history, success literature focused heavily on the character ethic. We're talking integrity, humility, patience, the golden rule. But right around post-World War I, the focus shifted to the personality ethic. It became all about public image, communication techniques, and just having a positive attitude. Now, the personality ethic isn't entirely bad, but these are secondary traits. If we focus only on charm and completely ignore the foundational character traits, our success is never going to last. This quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson hits the nail on the head. "What you are shouts so loudly in my ears that I cannot hear what you say." It's absolutely crucial to realize that long-term success is impossible if your fundamental character is flawed. I mean, if you use human relations techniques just to manipulate people, but you lack deep integrity, that duplicity is eventually going to breed distrust. Basic goodness is what actually gives life to any technique. Let's move on to section 3, shifting your paradigm, or basically how we see the world. This right here is the core philosophical pillar of the text. So what exactly is a paradigm? Simply put, it's a model, a theory, or a frame of reference. Think of it as the map through which we interpret the territory of reality. But here's the critical part, and we really can't miss this. A paradigm is not the territory itself. It's just our map of it. And most of the time, we don't even realize we're looking through these conditioned mental lenses. We just assume the way we see things is simply the way they actually are. Imagine you're trying to navigate downtown Chicago, but because of some weird printing error, you've been given a map of Detroit. Think about how absurdly frustrating that would be. If you have the wrong map, working harder on your behavior by just speeding up doesn't help. It literally just gets you to the wrong place faster. And working on your attitude by being incredibly positive doesn't help either, because you're still completely lost. The fundamental problem is the map itself. To show how powerful a shift in your map can be, Covey shares this incredible subway story that gives us a mini aha moment. He was on a quiet Sunday subway in New York when a man and his children got on. The kids were being super loud, throwing things, just completely running wild. And the father, he just sat there with his eyes closed, doing absolutely nothing. The irritation in that train car was palpable. Finally, Covey couldn't take it anymore and asked the man to control his kids. The man kind of lifted his gaze, almost like he was waking up, and said softly, "Oh, you're right. We just came from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago. I don't know what to think, and I guess they don't know how to handle it either. Instantly, the paradigm shifted. All that irritation vanished, replaced immediately by deep compassion. That is the quantum power of a paradigm shift. So what should our maps actually be aligned with? The answer is principles. Principles are like lighthouses. They are natural laws that cannot be broken. The text references this famous story of a battleship demanding a light in the distance change its course, only to find out the light is a stationary lighthouse. Objective reality is built on unbending principles like fairness, integrity, and human dignity. We don't break principles. We can only break ourselves against them if our maps don't align. Section 4, the P/PC balance, the ultimate rule of true effectiveness. And this brilliantly illustrates the cure for those flawed paradigms. Aesop's fable of the goose and the golden egg perfectly captures us. You know the story. A poor farmer finds his goose laying a pure golden egg every single day. He gets rich, but then he gets super greedy. He decides to just kill the goose to get all the gold at once, only to find out it's completely empty inside. Now he has no eggs and no goose. True effectiveness requires balancing P, the production of desired results, those golden eggs, with PC, the production capability, the actual asset or the goose that produces those results. We essentially have 3 kinds of assets that we manage: physical, financial, and human. If you buy a fancy lawnmower but never maintain the engine, you ruin a physical asset. If you dip into your principal to fund your lifestyle, you're ruining a financial asset. But human assets, those are the most vital. Think about parenting. If a parent uses fear, threats, and shouting to force a child to clean a room, that's the golden egg, they might get a clean room today, but they severely damage the emotional development and the relationship with the child, the goose. Ruining a prized asset for a short-term return is literally the opposite of effectiveness. All right, Section 5, Habit 1. Be proactive, the freedom to choose. Now that we have our foundational mental maps in place and we understand the PPC balance, we can look at our first actionable tool for change. Human growth naturally follows a sequential path called the maturity continuum. We all start at dependence, the paradigm of you take care of me. As we mature, we reach independence, the paradigm of I am self-reliant. But contrary to popular belief, independence isn't the finish line. The highest level of maturity is interdependence, the paradigm of we, cooperating to combine our efforts and achieve vastly greater success together than we ever could alone. But to move out of dependence, we first have to become proactive. To really understand proactivity, we look to the profound discovery of Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the horrific Nazi death camps. Stripped of his family, his possessions, his entire environment, he realized he still possessed the last of the human freedoms. He discovered that between what happened to him, the stimulus, and his response to it, was his absolute freedom to choose. Unlike animals that are programmed by instinct, humans possess self-awareness, imagination, conscience, and an independent will. And that leads us perfectly to the definition of proactivity. It means taking initiative and recognizing that our behavior is a function of our conscious decisions and internal values, not our external conditions. Reactive people are totally driven by their physical and social environment. If people treat them well, they feel well. But proactive people, they carry their own weather with them. They completely subordinate their impulses to their deeply held values. You know, one of the easiest ways to spot your own underlying maps is just by listening to your daily language. Listen for reactive phrases like, "There's nothing I can do," or "He makes me so mad." This is a dangerous attempt to essentially play the victim. It tells the world that we are a victim of our circumstances. Instead, proactive language sounds more like, "Let's look at some alternatives," or simply, "I choose." Proactive people do not empower the weaknesses of others to control their own emotional lives. So the crucial point here is what the source material calls the inside-out approach. Private victories absolutely must precede public victories. You cannot permanently improve your relationships with others or your outward circumstances before you improve yourself. We have to start by changing our deepest motives, our paradigms, and our character. Hacking away at the leaves of attitude and behavior does nothing. We've got to strike at the root. I want to wrap up this explainer with a really provocative question, something for you to chew on. What golden eggs are you currently chasing at the expense of your goose? Are you driving for short-term results at the cost of your health, your peace of mind, or maybe your relationships? I challenge you to take a hard look at your own maps, shift your paradigms, and begin practicing true proactivity today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this deep dive.